Neurotrain Collaborative Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Van Horn with Neurotrain, and today I have a special guest, Zachariah Salazar. I'm really excited to introduce him to you guys. He's been my mentor for the last, I think we're going on, well, sure, six years, I think, or maybe 6.5. And for me, I just want to give a little background on my story. When I got into Z Health, I had a pretty severe concussion and I was going through a pretty traumatic time in my life. My brother passing away, and I had all this pain that regular traditional care, massage, acupuncture, chiropractor was helping somewhat, but it wasn't really fixing the issues. And then when I started studying the Z Health curriculum, I started to get a lot better. My pain went away. I was able to heal a lot of things, but eventually my body tanked and I was sick for 6 months, and there wasn't anything that I could do to fix being sick. I tried, everything that I knew to get healthy again and to, get rid of my cold. It was an upper respiratory infection. And finally I raised the white flag, and that's when I called Zachariah. I had heard about him through other colleagues. I knew that he helped people with nutrition and thyroid function. And within a couple of days of taking his advice and cutting out toxic additives and PUFA and different things, all of a sudden my cold went away. And then within a week, I was dealing with a lot of chronic depression and anxiety at the time. That started to resolve. Over the next month, my cycle got regular for the first time in my life. My sleep improved. And then in the next 3 years, I was able to completely heal from my concussion, where I had pretty much stalled out at that point. So I'm super grateful to have him here. He's completely changed my life and how I see things just by being himself. And Zachariah, I'd love to have you just tell us a little bit about yourself. And I know you've been teaching for the last 40 years. I wanted to share a slide while you're talking.
Yeah. Hi there. I'm old and cranky. I've been working on people for a long time. It was actually never my intent. I like always talking. When people ask me, I was at a seminar this last weekend, and people asking my origin story, and I got to say, yeah, I started about 43 years ago, and then about 40 years ago, taking it rather seriously. They're like, wow, how old are you? I'm like, well, I'm 54. And it all started with hands-on work because my stepfather was at a social event, and a guy with a gun who was showing off this gun said the gun wasn't loaded. He dropped said gun, and unloaded gun went off, and a bullet went through one of his ankles and into his other calf. So it became the thing that for me to work for my dollar allowance was he would have me massage his foot to help relieve his pain. So my grandmother, being the hippie that she was into reflexology and massage and shiatsu and Reiki and all this cool stuff. So she would show me things and lend me books and teach me all this stuff, so that when I worked on my stepfather, it worked and he got better and I learned things. And I had no idea that I was learning that was something that would become foundational and fundamental to pretty much everything I ever did. And this includes 16 years of teaching music, where I could alleviate people's pain that was getting in the way of their musical performance. And then later on, getting into the stuff that was very nervous system centered, very brain centered, as it's common to say now, but where we could use visual, vestibular drills, coordination drills to improve a musician's playing immediately in one session instead of over weeks and months. From there, I went into martial arts and then found out that my knowledge for helping and fixing people became useful, because I'd be sitting next to somebody in class and we'd be stretching out and somebody would say something about an ache or pain. And I'm like, well, are you just talking about that, or do you want to know how to fix it? Because I know. So I ended up doing a lot of rehabilitation and corrective exercise. I was a poor kid, though, and didn't have a lot of resources. So while a lot of kids in my young age group were spending a lot of time doing vandalism and selling drugs, I was stealing rehab books from bookstores and learning how to do that stuff. And so basically, I would go online and I would look at the curriculum for a certain thing, and I would find all the textbooks that they had, and then I would read them. And when I was 17, I met a guy, really generous human being, and he was a medic in Vietnam. And then when he came back to the States, he became a paramedic. And then he realized the gore and horror he saw in that he couldn't handle. It was too bad for flashbacks. So then he went into sports medicine, and he went halfway through all that and then decided that, once it started getting back into the deep anatomy, physiology, compound injuries, he couldn't deal with that. So hanging out with me, we're listening to, Pink Floyd playing hacky sack and whatever, because he was like cool old dude from the 60s. He basically said, here, I want to show you something. And he gave me all of his textbooks, all of the stuff that he studied. He goes, like, you're a bright kid. I think you'll use this because I just can't. My brain doesn't work that way anymore. So again, I got into a huge foundation. And then I was fortunate enough to just run into massage therapists, chiropractors, people doing Alexander technique. There's all kinds of people, and end up working with people, working around them, hanging out in clinics, getting to wear scrubs, which is cool because they have black scrubs, and I love wearing black stuff. So it was fun to work in clinics and put all that together. And then I got to a point of where I had all these systems down. I mean, I've got like 20 different things that I've been through and certified in and all this practice. And there were certain points when I couldn't get what I wanted from people. I thought the effort that they were paying wasn't giving them the dividends they deserved. And it didn't make sense to me from a being, from a human animal, from the sense of how people work together, that there had to be more. And I stumbled into Dr. Eric Cobb and Z Health, and I did that by way of another trainer. I was going through the Czech Institute's high performance exercise kinesiology program, and I met a person who'd been through it, and he was like, "Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you're going through it. Hey, do Z Health." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Well, go do the Z Health thing." I'm like, "Well, I have their book, their R phase thing or whatever." He goes, "Yeah, it's great. Just like go do it." And I'm like, "Okay, but I'm already in this other program. And what I was asking you about is how could I be better at this program?" He goes, "Yeah, it's cool. It's a great program. Just go to Z Health." And I'm like, he goes, "It was the early days. So it's like if you go to the course and you spend all of your time there learning their stuff, and at the end of the course you don't think it's worth it, they'll give you your money back." And then the poor kid in me goes, "Oh, hey, maybe I could. Maybe I could." And I called them up and I talked to them about a whole lot of different things and the stuff that I was good at and the stuff that I wanted to learn. And then just through, fortune, they were having a course near where my brother lived on the East Coast. So I had a place to stay and I had a car that I could borrow, and it just fit in my financial world. And I showed up on the first day and I had this huge stack of papers, a huge thing of complaints because I'm that antagonistic guy. And after the first couple hours of lecture and me talking through stuff in class, I just took my little packet and threw it in the trash can and went, "Okay, I found the place to be." And that at that time, there was only an art phase in Z Health. And now there's a whole curriculum that if you really learn the curriculum and don't just go through it to earn it, but like you really learn it and do it. Yes, I'm talking to you, ZL people are listening. If you go out there and become competent, you can stand toe to toe with the best massage people and chiropractors and PTs in the world at fixing people. It's a lot to learn, a lot to do. If there was a part of Z Health performance that is lacking, it is in the hands-on integration with neurology, and that's why I came up with this course, and that's why it's called integrations. It's a collection of tools that anyone can do, and if you have the background of another system, you can add to it. It's not designed to replace, it's designed to be additive. It's designed to be a framework that is based around the most common, most obvious things of how to fix the body with the least amount of efforts. Now, this does require touching. This requires human interaction. But I've always been a proponent of the idea that people as individuals, people as the solo entrepreneur, the movie star, the person who wants to spend $1 billion to fly out in space for no reason, that those people aren't really connected to the inherited and tribal nature of people. And there's all sorts of modalities and all through history and nature that we've used touch for healing and a touch for improvement. There's a reason the things like movement, like dance, exist in every culture, and there's a reason that of all the different types of struggle and combat that every culture has wrestling, because touch is a powerful way to change the brain and how it maps and how it heals. So as practitioners, I think that even if we're the best people, even if we're fully degreed in neuroscience, if we're leaving out the powerful interactions that touch has the ability to perform on patients, clients, friends, pets, well wishers, whomever, we're leaving out a huge part of that is fundamental to our history. That's just, it's there for a reason. There's a reason why, kind words and a soft touch can be soothing to people. And there are real neurological reasons for it. There is proof now, for example, that contact to contact, skin to skin contact, human beings can appropriate natural killer cells in the body and move them to different areas. There are numerous things that happen that are now proven physiologically through the interaction of touch beyond just this feels good, and the reason I feel better is because it feels good. There is genuinely provable medical, physiological things that are caused by human interaction with touch. And that's just very, very important to me because so much of it is veiled behind an enormous paywall and a level of complexity that is unnecessary. People make too many things too hard. There's too many filler techniques. I mean, I was talking to this girl that the only way that she could get into school was if she went to this long program that was part of a tech school, and it was $20,000 to become a hands-on therapist. And I'm like, wow, that's like a lot of change. That's like I was thinking about all the stuff I could buy with that. My first car cost me $500. I'm like, whoa, that's a ton of money. It does not require as much superior technique. It requires practice. It requires the want to do. It requires the ability to build rapport and try and be good humans to each other. So it benefits everyone at all levels, regardless of whether you're someone who's in pain or injured, or you just want to feel better, or you want to be better at whatever it is that you do, whether it's make money or make art or groom dogs. I don't care. Better is better.
That's so awesome. You mentioned something that some people might not know about natural killer cells. Could you just kind of elaborate on what those are and how they affect the body?
I don't want to get too heavy into it because it'll turn into a ridiculous physiology discussion that people will tune out on. But you can like look up NK cells, for example, just Google it or Wikipedia it. That's enough. There are numerous cells. There are substances, substance P, bradykinins, natural killer cells, things that are all involved with the clean up the mess processes of the body. So much more than immunity, but of health and function and also longevity. Think of it as it's not just about the ability to live to be 70, 80, or 90, but it's how quality is your tissue when you get there. My grandmother lived to be 90, and she, being in health as I have been in, she would always tell me, well, the next time, don't extend my 70s, extend my 40s. Because she's like, the last, 20 years of this has just been crap. I would call her. I go, "How are you, Grandma?" She'd be like, "Old." I'm like, "What are you doing?" She goes, "I'm sitting on my porch trying to figure out what kind of bandana to wear so I could get a drive by." I'm like, "Grandma, you live on a farm. Nobody drives by you." And she had a great, bitter, fun sense of humor. And like I said, she got my start on healthcare. But her big thing was she didn't understand why so much of health was about keeping people alive and not keeping people lively. And that is all part of this. You can get into the physiology of affecting fibrin structures in the body versus elastin, meaning when you're younger you replace tissues with elastin, when you're older you replace them with collagen fibers. But that's not even such a major problem if you understand that you do great body work or great movement work. You do some z drills and some yoga and you dance and play soccer and you do all this stuff, but then you don't integrate the fact of where, well, you need vitamin C and you need collagen to remodel those tissues. It doesn't matter how good your work is if you're not doing the stuff you need. If you move super well, but what you need is an external stimulus because it's more powerful for remodeling, then you can be great being a hermit on the hill, but you're never going to be as great as when you interact with someone that has the ability to give you some healing touch. And by healing touch, I also mean athletic touch. It's not all about injury and pain. I don't care who it is. You take any, I've done this bet before. I go, I'll bet you lunch. You put anyone in front of me. I don't care how good of an athlete they are. Let me give me a session. I'll make them better. That's the whole point. We all have that potential. And so many people rest on the idea of good enough. And for so many people, good enough is aches and pains and being super stiff in the morning and taking 30 minutes to warm up. And I had a client that they were complaining about a certain exercise. And I'm like, oh, like it's because I'm old. I go, no, it's not. It's because you don't do it. I go, what makes you think you get to just have this massive carryover from doing this other stuff? And the thing you want to do isn't like it at all. And you think you should be good at it. I used to kid my grandmother because she said, like, she was saying, couldn't believe how hard it was to like get up off the floor. And I watched her do it once. I'm like, wow, because you suck at it. Now, this is a woman that beat me in arm wrestling until I was 14. Like, she didn't even have like a normal washer and dryer. She had one of those things where you scrubbed it and then they wrung it out by hand. This woman had the grip of death. My friends would arm wrestle her because it was like, wow, that's crazy. I have pictures of my grandmother when she was young, and she was the chick wearing, jeans and a white t-shirt and your rolled up sleeve with some Lucky Strikes in it. And she owned a motorcycle. She was a woman driving an Indian. And in that day and age, that was like a no-no. She was tough. She hunted for food. She cut her own wood. She was a tough chick. And for her to go, I'm having a hard time getting off the floor. And it was literally couple of drills, a little bit of skin stem. Now here, move this way, bam. I'm like, see, you weren't broken. This is you just didn't realize you were picking a really terrible way to get off the floor. That's important to people.
Totally. I have been working with a couple clients myself, and the fear of falling is not only just the fall itself, obviously, because falls are a leading cause of death and etc., but it's also I'm not sure I can get off the floor once I'm down there. And so just even practicing getting on the floor and using good technique to actually get up off the floor has been like such a huge stress reducer for those clients. It's been pretty powerful.
Yeah, and if you look at the like if you look in Z Health, then the end of our phase is the squat series. It's 5 different types of squats that blend together into a spiral. It's basically teaching you how to collapse and explode. And there's tons of movements like that. Like you look at the basic I phase lunges, the second level stuff, and all those lunges are pretty shallow. They're at like 90-degree knee angles. But the reason is that's where your ideal force production is created. Your depth and full range of motion really comes out of the early drills that are so-called easier. But I've taught Z classes with over 100 people in them. And I love seeing all the buff people get wiped out by just doing easy mobility because, again, to them, it's novel and new. Then you grab those guys, you run them over to the squat rack and have them bench or squat, and they get better. And I go, see, you just weren't testing the silly stuff. If you did, you'd realize the silly stuff actually makes you better. One of the guys who's a Z Health master practitioner, Shamsul, he's up in the Northeast, and he's been a weightlifter and a strongman for years. And he'd be farther up the chain if he would quit, falling off motorcycles and stuff. But he was in a training cycle, and he did a post about it recently where he had a max for this certain lift. I think it was like 365 for 3. And then he did the integrations course and he went back. And then at the contest, he did, I think, 365 for 15. And it wasn't that far away. He didn't have some magical training program. We literally just took this and go here, step by step, do all the things, and then go to the barbell, meaning step by step, do what you're going to do. Dance, ballet, do yoga, throw a ball with your kids, run with your dog, do the things and then integrate it into what you're doing, or you'll never know how much better it makes you.
100%.
I've worked with people that were, doing chefery and they didn't realize that just with a little bit of the right kind of mobility, it was so much easier to, do that 4-minute whisk drill they were having such a hard time with. There's just so much that can be done, but part of it is people aren't taught from a young age to self-assess. If you don't do that, then all of this touch and movement therapy becomes like brushing your teeth. We just do it out of habit, but brushing your teeth once doesn't seem to have like this big carryover. But over a lifetime, it matters a ton. And the same thing, if there was a way to assess it on the short term, then it would make things a lot easier. I used to love how my mom, she was in dentistry, she'd give you the little dye pills, and you put them in your mouth, and it would show you the areas that you missed when you were brushing your teeth. I'm like, that was like amazing feedback for a kid. And that was like a contest, you know? People don't often have enough to do to know that they're doing better. People don't give themselves the opportunity to be great on a long enough timeline. That's what my coaching group about online is about. That's what the whole idea of meander towards greatness is. Meander doesn't mean to wander. It means, you know, a river approaching the shore will go around mountains and fields and through valleys, and it will pool at points that it needs to build up enough water to overcome the next obstacle. It's about being relentless in the long term. It's about being great, but giving yourself reasonable time. I taught martial arts for years. I did martial arts almost 40 years, taught it consistently for 27. I taught music consistently for 16. And it's so weird to me that people will be like, well, hey, I want to be able to play like Stevie Ray Vaughan. How long can I do that? Probably 4 or 5 years. That doesn't sound like that long. Well, yeah, because it's already been done. There's a roadmap. We can make you that good, no problem. Oh, okay. People came to me in martial arts. Well, how long is it going to take me to be a black belt? I don't know, probably 3 to 5 years, depending upon, you know, your starting point of fitness. Well, that doesn't seem too bad. That's not. I want to get in shape for a wedding. It's 6 weeks away. I want to get in shape for whatever. It's 9 weeks away. I just got a divorce. I want to get in revenge shape. What can you do for me in a month? And it's like people don't give themselves the time to be great. The problem with that then becomes the people that do give themselves the time to be great, they learn 3 months of fitness and then they repeat 3 months of fitness for the next 10 years. That's like me going in and learning white belt stuff and then doing white belt stuff for 10 years. Yeah, I never got to the splits and jump spinning kicks and breaking, you know, cinder blocks with my face because I just kept my yellow belt, you know? And people do that with fitness and then they think they can't be great because they don't understand progression. They don't understand if you start tomorrow with your best plan, the more vascular tissues you are, meaning the more blood flow, the more reperfusion after activity, the faster they change. So things like, you know, your blood can change in 40 to 60 days. Your muscle tissue will change later than that. But when you get to ligaments, tendons, and bones, things that are avascular, those take so much more to change. So if you really want to look at your true change potential, you start doing a great plan now. It's going to take you 2 years until your skeleton is caught up with what your ligaments have caught up with what your tendons have caught up with what your muscles have caught up with. And then over that course of time, you're going to continue to improve the program. And that's why I say, if you give yourself 5 years, you're going to really see what you're capable of because you're not doing 5 years of the same 3 months of BS. Or I've met people that picked a workout out of a magazine and literally have done that for 10 years. And they think they can't do X, Y, and Z. I had a girl that all she wanted to be able to do fitness wise, she met her other goals, was do a pull up. And I'm like, well, how much did you practice doing pull ups? Well, she's like, none, I can't do them. Okay. But you can do all this other crazy stuff. Well, yeah, ugh, but it's still practice. You don't get it for free. And this is the thing because she could do heavy rows and she could do tons of snatches. She could do like 100 snatches in 5 minutes with a 35 pounder. She was strong, but she didn't get it. I said when I first moved to Phoenix, when I was practicing to do as many perfect form pull-ups as I could do, after 4 months of practice, I could do 22 in a row, dead hang. However, working out with pull-ups in my normal routine just as part of a normal workout, my typical amount of pull-ups that I could do the perfect form was 11 or 12. So literally without specific practice at making them excel, I could do only half as many pull-ups as I could as if I was really concentrating on them. Then when I moved here, moved to this house that didn't have any regular doorways and everything was stucco, and I had no place for a pull-up bar. So for like 3 months, I didn't do any pull-ups, but I did heavy rows. I had my cool, 106-pound kettlebells. So I did tons and tons of rows and worked the lats and all this other stuff. And then when I finally got a pull-up bar, the first time I did pull-ups, I could do 4. I didn't stop working out. I didn't get weaker, but I lost that pattern. I lost that skill set. Now, when you've experienced that, and the majority of people that are successful in athletics is because they've had all those lessons, they've made all those mistakes, they did all their screwing up in the teenage years. So in their adult years, they already have the kind of notion of what to do. And then those people become trainers, completely disconnected from the population of people that never learned the lessons and maybe starting getting fit at 25, 35, 45, 55, and still have those lessons to learn. They have no proof of concept that goes, this is certainty, but certainty is years. I had someone tell me once, well, why should I do all this stuff? It's going to take me like 5 years or whatever. I said, put it this way. If you're doing a good workout and you're doing all your warm-ups and stuff anyway, then really just get rid of your warm-ups and then do this stuff. Time is your currency. You're not spending any more time, but the difference is you'll get better at something. So after 5 or 10 years of warming up and doing visual drills and inner ear drills, movement drills, and all that, well, you'll have something gained. You won't be the kid who took white belt techniques and did white belt for 5 years. So that's my beef about how things work. People make it too hard, and then they don't realize their long-term potential because they've made it too hard. Or they're looking at someone that's gifted, they have the right kind of mechanics to do something easy. I remember that I was having a terrible time trying to learn how to do a pistol squat until I met with an actual biomechanist, and he goes, dude, you are flat-footed, you have hallucis hiatus, which means my big toes don't bend back, and you have 0 degrees dorsiflexion. 0. I'm like, look, I can do it a little. He goes, no, you are literally flexing your bones to get that. You have 0, because you're the last person that should do a pistol. I'm like, well, I can do one if I put like a really heavy weight out in front. He goes, yeah, that's a counterbalance. Did you hear what I said? And then I met this person who was an Olympic lifter. So they were an Olympic lifter. Why? Because they had the right kind of bone lengths and they excelled at it, right? First time I showed this girl a pistol, she did 9. I went, well, that was fun. What else you got? And I'm like, oh. So part of it is meeting with people where you can understand the difference between, oh, I'm just not good at it, and this is a limitation, and you might not want to butt up against something that's going to take you 100 times more work than necessary for performance. There,
Totally.
my rants over. My soapbox is smoking.
That's good. I would actually, I know some people here are new to the neural side of things, and we can just take a second and talk a little bit, because this was pretty mind blowing for me as a massage therapist and craniosacral therapist, getting into the Z Health curriculum and learning that the proprioceptive input system basically is like not as important as the visual and vestibular input systems as far as hierarchical priority in the brain, and how vision and vestibular function actually directly affects posture and what's called our reflexive tone when we stand against gravity. um how does that play with the reflexive the primitive reflexes that you kind of talk about in your course, and then how do you combine those techniques to kind of address that aspect of it?
Well, here's the easiest answer. I remember reading some translated information that was from the 50s, and it was talking about visual reflexes, the from the orb of the eye, the position of the muscles, not what we would refer to as eyesight, not visual clarity, but the movement of the eyes. So if you're blind, does this work? Yes. But the idea was that if a muscle is in moving into flexion, so let's say you're doing a biceps curl, then eyes down would facilitate that, meaning it would make it stronger. If you were moving into extension, which means the opposite of flexion, or if you're an anatomy person, you're lying down, you're in your anatomical position. Ooh, fancy. And I don't know. You're lying down in the anatomical position, And then you bend at the elbow, you bend at the knee, you bend at the, wherever. You're moving into a space, you're moving into flexion. And then returning from that is extension. So an easy way to look at it would be is if my elbows are flexing and my knees are flexing and my ankles are flexing, meaning they're moving into flexion. Flexion is the specific word we're looking here for. Then that would be like kind of collapsing into a squat, like if you're going to bend down and pick up something. And then universal extension would be the reverse of all those motions. And that would be like if you were standing up or trying to put something on a shelf. So eyes going down helps flexion or like deepening into a squat, for example, and eyes up will work into moving into extension. Now, your eyes can move in different angles beyond that to fire different muscles. But one of the problems, and I really try to simplify this in the course by giving you here's a sheet, do it this way because this is how it works, and we can explain it later is the idea that you also, of course, you have flexion and extension, but you also have rotation. There are no muscles of rotation. It's simply flexors and extensors firing together in opposition that causes what we perceive as rotation. So then you have to know how to go, well, if I'm both using flexors and extensors, then how do I use my eyes to fix that? And that depends by position, and that's how you do it. The thing is all of this stuff, the same thing with head motion, charging the inner ear canals, or the otoliths, your sacral and your usual, all these things that are performing relative to the rectilinear, the constant line-like flow of gravity, you can use those things on a table. It's kind of like if you get that you could do a drill that would make you better just standing there. And then if I put you in an athletic stance and we had to do some drills like you were playing basketball, you'd be like, cool, that makes sense. Or if I put you down in a sprinter squat, like you're in a bullet squat, like you're at the blocks of a sprinter, and you could do drills there, you go, yeah, it's cool. So why can't you do them on a table? Well, of course you can. You just have to know how to imitate the movements that make it look like you're going to do something and then facilitate it with the inner ear and the eye. Now, what you mentioned talking about the proprioception, it's all like this long chain of buzzwords. Like I said, I'm old, so I've been around forever. So before we had the word proprioception, we used the word somatic, and soma means body. So you draw your little Venn diagram, the three circles that interact together. If you don't know what that is, there's tons of them on Facebook for various puns and jokes and memes. But a Venn diagram shows your overlap of systems. So if you were to draw a circle and then overlap with another circle and then draw a third circle that overlaps with the first two, and you were to think, here's my vision, and then here's my inner ear, which people say is balance, and those words are not interchangeable. And then you have the last one, which is proprioception, the sense of your joints in space. But how I teach it is a more complete model, and that model is called equilibrioception. But that because that takes into account your balance problem might not be from your inner ear. It might be from your eyes. It might be from years of wearing bifocals and you didn't know that could give you a balance issue. It might be that you have fantastic, you have the inner ear of a cockroach. You could walk across the ceiling. However, there's something wrong with your feet, whether it's genuine neuropathy or just poor sensation. So your balance problem is coming from your feet. Well, I wouldn't call that an inner ear problem. So you can't really say inner ear is balance. You have to say all of them contribute to balance, and all of them collectively are equilibrioception. And that's how I look at the system. Now, the biggest import for this when it comes to pain, and whenever you think of pain, think of performance, because performance gets hindered until it becomes pain. It's on the same timeline, it's a stratification. Don't separate athleticism and your highest future ability from the concept of relieving yourself of pain and discomfort. In your brain, these things are all comparative correctors. They're constantly giving information. The Dr. Padula, he talks about the idea of you're sitting in a chair and in your brain, you make the motor plan. You're using the information that you get from already just sitting there. and your associative cortex, your motor cortex. You're using the maps in your parietal lobe that are relative to what you are virtually in space. And then you go to move. And in general, it's a lesson, kids. Don't pin me down on this one. You look before you move, before you stand. So as you look and then you move, well, your eyes are providing information, and now your body is moving, and that's providing information. And now your inner ear is moving inside your skull as your head is moving, and then your brain is comparing that vestibular response to that flow of gravity, that vertical line towards the center of the earth, that rectilinear flow, if you want to be specific about it. It means a straight line. Then you have information that is constantly comparing. Did my eyes tell me the room accurately? As I go to move, am I judging the surface that I'm walking on? As I'm moving or stopping through space, is my inner ear sending the proper information to allow me to generate the level of rigidity I need to do non-consciously? Let's say, for example, in my neck or in my back. My vestibular colic response, my vestibular spinal response, or with my eye position and my head moving, my vestibular ocular response. You can throw all the sciencey words out there and sound as smart as you want, but really it's about the basic idea of making a decision, moving through space with sensation, then movement, and then that movement creates sensation, and then that's all reassessed. Now, the things that Badula and other authors talk about, and this is the most important thing, Anya Wong talks about this too, and it's the idea that those systems are comparative correctors for each other, meaning your vision, your inner ear stimulus, and your movement and contact with the world is providing information for those other systems that say, yes, I trust this. So, how powerful is this system? It is common that babies, if they are born paralyzed, they will go blind. And the reason is the brain doesn't trust the information from the eyes because there's no motion from the body. There's no feedback from the inner ear for confirmation. So it will dismiss the signal. Now that's what happens to you body wide, cell by cell, joint by joint at a given threshold. If you're giving poor information, your body's going to start dismissing things. It's going to start stealing your range of motion. It's going to make your base of support, how wide you can stand safely over your center of gravity. It's going to change it. You're going to shuffle instead of walk. You're not going to be able to sprint and use momentum as one of the things for balance. You're going to be stuck like a person trying to walk across a tightrope without a long pole to balance with. That's how things work. Everything communicates and everything corrects the other. So while in a class where you're trying to learn about very specific precision, you may do a very precise drill to try and treat or assess the vestibular system. But in my world of training, I'm going to try and do it as natural as possible and say that, well, generally gross movements are the movements that inform, and that's what makes things better. Here's an example of a big cheat I'll teach people. Brian Thomas and I were working with an athlete in Z Health, and they were having some problem with back motion. And their back would lock doing a lumbar circle, doing a big circle with their lumbar spine. And they would get a tremor, and they almost had an absence seizure from it, like checking out slightly for a second while it occurred. Now, Brian is a super studious guy, and we had just went through and watched a whole bunch of information studying on vestibular components. And I said, so judge on your testing, what do you think is happening? And he was able to pinpoint the canal and the tests and drills that you do for that canal to fix that. And I went, that's awesome. And that's sometimes necessary, especially if there's pain involved or the inability to move well. However, because this person had no problem at their cervical spine, I just said, well, let's do your sciencey stuff later. Let's do my lazy stuff now. So all I said is you're trying to move yourself in a lumbar circle. If you just did with your head out with your head, what would it look like? It just looked like you're rolling your head. Well, she had no problem doing this. So she just rolled her head 10 times in one direction and then did the lumbar circle, which was the gross motor version of the head roll, and bam, everything was fixed. That's how in nature we would fix ourselves, with a lot of gross movement, with a lot of gross visual stim, with a lot of play. If you mentioned primitive reflexes, so that's a whole nother can of worms. But basically, we're supposed to have all these reflexes to help us move, and then they go away, but not really. They're hidden behind frontal lobe output. There is a test you can do involving tapping someone's forehead, and if they blink, they're normal if they blink a couple of times. But if you keep tapping on their forehead between their eyes, then they keep blinking. Well, that sensitive response is still there. That was never overcome by frontal lobe output. And they go, "Oh, you have escape. You have, and when you have escape, it's basically, and this is how people teach it. This is what I don't like about it. They say, well, you're reverting to an earlier thing, like an injury. You have like a pathological movement problem. We have to fix it. I'm saying, no, the brain goes, we have an inefficiency problem. So it's going back to an earlier reflex that may have helped us. That's a great system. Well, for example, in the Babinski reflex, that reflex across the bottom of the foot is supposed to help babies stand. Well, if you keep that response strong, because let's say as part of your routine, once or twice a week, you just walk up a hill or sprint up a hill, you're moving up a hill, you've got some toe extension causing toe flexor activation, meaning think about where your toes are when you're hiking up a hill. They're not straight like a mountain climber or a ballerina. They're bending upwards. So you're getting that toe bend, that ball of foot pressure, and the stretch across the brevis and longest muscles of the foot. You're ensuring those sensitive responses later in case you need to stand up, do a squat, do a Turkish get up, go up a flight of stairs. If you're a person that, because of just happenstance where you live, there's no stairs in your house, there's no stairs anywhere you go, and you don't traverse any hills in your daily walks or in your daily activities, you can lose that response and suddenly become terrible at hip extension and suddenly be terrible at squatting, terrible at lunging, and go, oh, I have knee pain, I have hip pain, it's my low back, I'm getting old. When really, it's just your brain trying to figure out to go, hey, wake up, dummy, move around, do some stuff because you shouldn't feel this way. So in my course, I try and mush all this stuff together. So it's a, hey, do this, don't do that thing. We'll talk about it later. There is free Zoom follow-up classes where we can get into the explanations. I like going to courses. I went to a course in a system I hadn't been in for my birthday a couple of weeks ago. It was awesome way to spend my birthday. However, I don't like sitting in classes for hours of lecture. Yeah, maybe important, but cool. I want to get to the drills because I can always listen to the lecture. I can always read the book. I need practice doing the work. So this course is condensed down. This could easily be 5 or 6 days of work. It's condensed down to either a 2.5 or 3 day course, depending on what's being taught, so that it is mainly brief explanation, hands-on work. Here's how you test it. This is what we're doing. Do. Get that together. Now, why am I making it shorter? Because it saves loss of wages. It saves on a hotel night. It saves on rental car. It's saving you money. So you put the money towards the education where it matters. And then you're getting supported post that for free. Because I don't want anybody to ever come to one of my courses and go, I don't get it. This sucks. Or it was great, but I don't use it. Because that shouldn't be how it is. Because everyone that I've taught this to, no matter how advanced they are, I mean, a third of the people at the course I taught in San Diego were chiropractors. They have a ton of education and they were impressed with it. And I've gotten raves from their practices. So the idea is this stuff is fundamental, but it's not hard. But just like I can sit there and go, well, every time you open your eyelid, that's like the prerebral muscle. But if you see someone, they open their eyes like kind of wide and sudden, that's actually the tarsal muscle. And that directly connects to your sympathetic nervous system. So that's a minuscule sign of startle. Yeah, we can bullshit all day long about the physiology behind it, but then you're going to leave and go, what do I do with mom and dad? What do I do with my patients, clients, friends, well wishers, and pets? I don't know because all I know is all these big words. And what I see in the past 10 years is all the worlds of functional whatever and neuro whatever is everybody is becoming super bookish and throwing around words, and their technique is going to shit, and no one is touching each other. And that's a huge problem because even unskilled touch that is caring helps. Any kind of rapport building helps. It improves the organism, and that is proven, and that's what I'm trying to do, is put these tools back into people's hands, or give them the tools of touch that they may instinctively have but have never officially learned. Fine, so be it. I was asked once about the legality of it. I'm like, well, we're not using any weird lotions or creams or solvents. No one's disrobing. We don't have to drape anyone. It's like medical or rehab massage. There's no speciality to it. We're not working on anything that's considered pathological. And since I use the term pathological, let this go on a recording to be spread out through the universe. Everyone in the world is using the word functional, and they're just wrong. Okay, here's what functional means, kids. It doesn't mean how well you help your friend move or how easily you can handle that keg of beer after the party. Functional has a very specific meaning in medicine. What it means is not pathological. If you have a pathological problem, you go, oh, this arrow sticking out of my chest prevents me from going through doorways. This will inhibit my quality of life. That is the problem. This eventually will kill me or cause great disease, has the original meaning of the word disease, disease. So the arrow through the chest, definitely pathological. However, if you're tested and you go, my eye movement's a little slow, or maybe my balance is a little wobbly, but I don't fall or break anything, you have what's called a functional deficit. And 70% of the population that is tested by actual PhD doctor neurologists have a functional deficit, one or more. And what the founders of this whole movement discovered was that if you collect enough non-pathological, non-disease, non-arrows in the chest, if you collect enough functional things, it starts to affect your pain, your performance, your health, your ability to sleep, your tolerance of others, which can affect your social life and your career. It all adds up. So from now on, when you hear the word functional, recognize whoever is saying it and they don't know what it means. Feel a little better about yourself, feel like you're a bigger person, smile a little to yourself, and realize that functional just means a deficit that isn't causing disease, but it's a testable deficit. And to us in like Z Health, which despite all the Z Health people throwing around the word functional, we're not functional neurology, we're applied neurology, because everything we do is based on the result of testing, not diagnosis. That's an important thing. You realize people are using the word functional wrong. Now, I hear this in anatomy all the time too. This is the same beef. So if I say, okay, what is flexion? Okay, flexion is shortening of a muscle and the moving of a joint into the sagittal plane. Okay, less sciencey. Hold something in your hand and curl it. That is flexion. However, you're also flexing your biceps. So people confuse flexion, which is an anatomical term, important to know doing drills, versus flexing, which is just flexing a muscle. And when I tell people in class, and I've done this 100 times to educated people, I go, cool, show me shoulder extension. And everyone raises their arm up. I go, no, that's extending your shoulder. The anatomical term is extension, and that's putting your hand behind you. Literal doctors getting this stuff wrong. I'm saying it because terminology means something. And if it affects how we perform, then you become in that category of people going, I'm using effort, I'm using my time. Effort and time are currency. I need to make sure that I'm spending it as if my life depends on it, because it does. Because we're not infinite and every little second matters. So, hey, I appreciate you if you've made it this far, because I am eating up your time.
Well, I think that was a great explanation, so I appreciate you going into that. Let's see here. The last few things that we'll say is, if you don't know, he has multiple dates for the human liminal course coming up. One here in technically Aurora, Colorado, Denver, Colorado. That'll be happening July 12th through the 14th. There is an early bird discount if you sign up before July 1st. And depending on what platform you're watching this, I'll either have a link where you can sign up, or there'll be a link in the bio for you to click on it and sign up there. Where are your other locations going to be, Zachariah?
I don't know. I just show them teach.
There's one in Germany coming up. I don't remember
Oh
the.
yeah, there's one in Germany coming up, right?
I believe
There's supposed to be another one in San Diego, but nobody can decide when that is because there's some docs down there that want to learn some stuff. So there's a few that are certain and some others that are up in the air. And if you have enough people, we can do it anywhere you want, anytime you want.
awesome. And let me think here. Anything else that we missed?
I'll just say this because someone asked me. The series of courses I have 6 of them, and I call them Liminal Human. That's the name of the series, because liminal is the space in between. Liminal is the transition point. That's an important word to know. It can be as simple as how I'm using it, in that you go to this course and it is the liminal space. It is where you're training and acquiring information, and you leave as a new thing. You have new information. You've gone through the space of transition. But I also use it up to bring up the word in conversation because liminal space is important to our health. Common example, you have someone that goes to work, they have a commute, they come home. That commute space is the liminal space for them to transition from becoming worker bee or entrepreneur or artist or whatever the hell it is you are to I'm now going to become my home identity. I'm going to become spouse and cat lover and dog petter and whatever else it is I'm going to be doing. And that liminal space is important. It's important that people have that time to transition. And sometimes I've seen people get worse simply because their commute changed. Previously, they had 30 minutes to listen to a book on Audible or listen to music or talk to their friends or do whatever. And now they've moved closer, and that saves them time and money and traffic. And this is all great. But they've actually lost some of their healing time because that liminal space has now gotten narrower. The liminal space is needed when someone comes home from work and they haven't had that time, when someone is going to work or going to school or whatever their external endeavor is, they're going from one world to another. If they haven't had the appropriate time to adjust, they're going to be a poor performer. They're going to feel it. It's going to be detrimental to them. There is a liminal space that transitions you from, hey, I'm binging and eating nachos, watching Netflix, to now I'd like to sleep. And people screw up that liminal sleep by not transmitting themselves to a state of red light beforehand, or decreasing activity, or getting the right amount of warmth, or whatever it is that they have that's prep for bed. And they may only need 5 or 10 minutes to organize that. But I've seen people go, this was life changing because they simply didn't have a routine before bed. And in that routine, you can interject things. I had one woman that she had some machinery fall on her at work and just compress her skull and spine down into her rib cage. And she was like just one of these former brilliant engineer, now just completely struggling to survive. And what she had to do is she took a Sharpie and she wrote on her bathroom mirror her drills and her supplements. So when she came in the morning, and as part of her routine, she's brushing her teeth. That's a movement stim. We got her a vibrating toothbrush because that was a good stim for her, etc., etc. You're building all these things in. Cool. We can put a red light in there too while she's in there, etc. You're compressing all these things. So in that transition to the rest of your day, you're using it because that time can be vital for production. It can be vital restoratively. It can be vital for your relationships. So you're not an ass to your partner. It's an important thing. So I use the word liminal human because I want to bring attention to that concept, not just that teaching is transitional and it should change you. You should leave a different, better person.
Thank you for explaining that. That was awesome. I remembered what the one more thing was that I wanted to drop in here too. Um, one of the things that Shamsul talked about in his testimony of what was working months after the course was that not only is this something that you can do on your clients hands on and at the power of touch, but it's also something they can do to themselves to prime up and warm up for whatever it is that they're trying to do. And he was talking about how a lot of his clients were using like a Theragun beforehand and hitting the spots that were in the sequence that he gave them. And that it really helped with the extension of the pelvis and the squat, and some of the squat depth, I believe. And then he had another runner who used it pretty rigorously for a month, who shaved 15 minutes off her 50-mile ultra run. So those were pretty shocking transformation stories, and I think that that's what was so exciting about the use of these things, is that it also kind of empowers clients to be able to use it on themselves. Do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about this because it took me, and I spent years thinking up this course. And when you're going to see it, you're going to go, "Really? This took years?" I go, "Yeah," because I had to pare down so much stuff to the things that were the most important, could be done the easiest, and affected the majority of things. That's why I make that joke. 91% of things can be, it might be 99%. I haven't found anybody that I can't make better yet. So, it could be everybody. I don't know. That just sounds too arrogant to say, and I'll leave that to each person and their experiments. But the idea is that all of this stuff I'm teaching now becomes a palette for your patients and clients to then do to themselves at home. So they have a very empowering thing that's similar. A lot of these areas will be very sensitive to touch. They will cramp easy. A lot of these things you're doing can be super painful. And if you give a person the autonomy to work on it themselves, they can reduce that sensation, which means the next time the hands-on person works on them, they're even better. Now, I'm a big fan of massage guns, and if you don't like them or don't think they work, you're just wrong, because they work fundamentally, especially in the hands of a person who is either low skill or just doesn't have the ability to do a lot of work. Now, there's a lot of great guns out there, and it's better if you go out to a store and buy some cheap $30 crap lightweight massage gun and have that. That's better than nothing. But at a certain level, I like the Theraguns because they're very clear in their models about their speed of performance, their cycles per second, their stall force, meaning how much pressure can I apply before the moving head of the apparatus stalls out and stops. And then the range. So you have depth, you have cycles per second, and then you have stall force. And the reason they're as important is if you get a massager that's not fast enough, the idea is if you have a massager that's sending a signal that's fast enough, the muscle spindle, the intrafusal fibers in the muscle can't rapidly overcompensate. So just the speed itself is causing a response. Now you have the pressure part. The pressure part can cause a response too. That is a different system of sensation. So for someone using the massager set at a very high speed, but moving it lightly, that's enough. Some people need more pressure, more depth, more stim, and that's fine. But when you're buying into those massagers at a certain level, and you can look at their stats, you can see, comparing all their massagers, which ones hit all of those marks and which ones don't. It does not mean the lighter ones still don't work. It means if you're like me, you have the lighter ones, you can put one in your pocket, use them in travel, but I also have the heavier duty ones just because I'll guarantee you after I spend sessions, and you know this, Aaron, working on people for a while, my hands are just too tired for me to do anything good for me. I need a massage gun to get my results. And there's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of people will work on themselves with a massage gun, and that vibration is very educational to their brain and their map of themselves. And they'll see a lot of global improvements that aren't really related to any of their goals. They just get better at stuff because of more stim. That's why I like brushes for skin skin. That's super cheap and easy. Anyone that's seen me at a course, I always have this big long gong tire brush. Everyone's seen them. They're Walmart or whatever. They're huge. They're for cleaning tires. And that's that long handle. So a guy like me can reach all areas of my back and whatever. And when you're looking at sensation, when I was in school for psychology, to become a psychologist, to become a therapist, my favorite chapter in the psychology book was sense and sensation. That's what led me to stuff like Z Health Performance. the idea that sensation could change people and that sensation can't be trusted. Like that everything you see is still 10 milliseconds late. Your brain is correcting it. You can't actually see at the speed of life. Everything that you are experiencing is a representation. You are not a first-hand experiencer of your experience. You are walking through an amalgam of all your systems that your brain is constructing for you. That's why illusions work, because they're taking advantage of those phenomena in your brain that can be taken advantage of because you don't really live in the real world. You're simply looking at a projection your brain made, and that's for all of your senses. But that means we can take advantage of that by using tools of sensation and replacing someone who may not have the skill. Maybe they're confined to a wheelchair. Maybe they have an arm in a cast, and their terrible left hand, their manos diablos is the only thing they have the ability to help them with, and they're trying to brush their teeth. They're poking themselves in the eye, and put a massage gun in the hand. Suddenly, they can facilitate most of their body even on their low skill side. So I'm a big fan of massage guns. The other thing too is Theragun makes a foam head, and when that came out, I bought a grip of them because that sensation is so light and great. You can use it all over your face. If you press it into your nose, it will vibrate your sinuses. So if you have a cold or congestion, that's fantastic. You can use it across your scalp, any part of your skin. That is a whole separate tool of sensation by itself. It's like having a whole new tool just to have the foam head and use it on that gun. Because especially older people, some people's tissue can't handle the integrity of the highest velocity, high pressure massagers, but they can definitely handle the stimulate of the foam sponge at a high speed, and you still get a good response with the tissues underneath that foam head. So it doesn't need to be, dug into you.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
so
I got a lot of words, so you better shut me up at some point.
Well, no, I really appreciate you taking the time and sitting down and talking to us about what your course is about, what people could expect. I'm really looking forward to this course. It's going to be awesome. And again, if you, depending on what platform you're watching this, if you look in the description, there's probably a link, or you can go to the link in the bio and sign up if you're interested in the course.
And
All
if
right.
anybody has any questions specifically for me, like I'm considering doing your course, but I don't want to waste my money. My modality is this. How do I use it? If you have any questions about how to fit it in, let me know. Like I said, I've been doing this 40 years. I've worked with everyone. So if you have questions, you can just message me on my Instagram, which is my name. Just private message me and I'll answer you.
Perfect. And I'll tag your Instagram as well.
Well,
Uh,
thank you.
Yes. And then one more thing I'll say is there are some payment options available too if you don't have the ability to put it down as one lump sum. So you can private message me to find out more information about that.
Yeah, and just to mention too, when I one of the last courses I did that was stupid expensive, I actually just put it on PayPal and made payments on it. And if you do it within a certain time, there was no interest. And that was the only way I could have afforded it. But it was a package deal that occurred. And I'm like, this is crazy expensive. And I wanted to do this for years. So again, making it that way made it worth it. And another thing too, just say financially, let me just say this part. I don't like talking about the money part because I grew up poor and I have a lot of very poor clients that I work with that don't pay me because they are. And I'll never turn anyone away. So if you want to fake to yourself that you're some sort of boxcar Willie character to get a free session out of me, it's totally possible. Um, but one of the it's true. Um, but one of the things about it is that part of how I designed this program was to help people make more money. I was under the assumption when I got into the whole world of neurological training that everybody would be like me and think it's the bee's knees. And a lot of people just don't get it. A lot of people don't want to do their drills. A lot of people just want to be worked on. And after years of trying to tell everyone how damn important doing the eye drills and the movement drills and the coordination drills and the joint drills and all this stuff, there is a sect of population that wants to be treated like race cars and we're mechanics, and they just want to be touched and worked on, and they want to go home and forget about it, and that's okay. So part of this section is designed with an emphasis on treating back pain for profit. Because since I remodeled myself and started attending to people's back pain as a specific feature, instead of just my whole general thing, and your back pain will go away too, I upped my income by about a third.
Nice.
So that's pretty phenomenal post COVID, because with COVID, everything went to hell. So bringing myself back to that category was purely changing some of my marketing and having a plan for those people that I know aren't going to do drills, but they want the treatment and they want to get out of pain. And this stuff works for that. So just as a little addendum on how to make your money back.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Zachariah.
Well,
And
thanks so much for putting up with me.
and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.